Welcome, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. My name is Valerie Harris, and I'm with the City of Austin Communications and Public Information Office. And I'm the Zoom administrator and production lead for today's event. Welcome to the community information meeting about the airport fuel storage facility. This will be a multilingual event, so everyone will need to select a language to participate, even if your chosen language is English. Tay, can you share the next slide? From your desktop or laptop computer, you can select the globe icon at the bottom of your screen and choose your preferred language. Next slide. From a phone or laptop, you click the three dots and select interpretation. Choose your preferred language and then press done. Once you've joined your designated language channel, you will hear the interpreter's voice clearly and the original audio in the background. To only hear the interpreter, please select mute original audio. If you're in the English channel, you will continue to hear the original audio at the standard volume. And now these instructions will be repeated in Spanish. Marion.
Gracias, Valerie. Bienvenidos a la reunión de información con la comunidad sobre la instalación de almacenamiento de combustible para aviones. Mi nombre es Marion Sánchez. Yo voy a ayudar a Valerie Harris hoy. Este evento está diseñado en varios lenguajes y todos los participantes tienen que escoger un idioma para participar. Si usted prefiere la junta en español, favor de agregar las letras E y S enfrente de su nombre para indicar su lenguaje de preferencia, como lo tengo yo hecho. Next slide. Si usted está en su computadora, presione el icono del globo en la parte de abajo de su pantalla. Si está en su teléfono o tableta, haga un clic en los tres puntitos. Seleccione interpretación de su idioma. En inglés se dice Language Interpretation. Su idioma favorito, presione listo. Esto activará la interpretación simultánea y oirá la voz del intérprete con el audio original de fondo. Para escuchar solo al intérprete, puede seleccionar Mute Original Audio. Si está en el canal de inglés, seguirá escuchando el audio original al volumen estándar. Gracias por su atención. Valerie, back to you.
Thanks so much, Marion. As a reminder for everyone, please update your Zoom name tag by adding the letters of your selected language in front of your name. You can use our name tags as examples. To change your name on your video window, click the three dots highlighted in blue and select Rename. The two letters that represent your chosen language in front of your name. Tonight, we're using EN for English and ES for Spanish. I mean, Espanol. We also will have live captioning on screen. So you may click the CC icon below. If you're on a mobile device, you may need to click the three dots to open the menu bar further. If at any time you need assistance, you may send a direct message to the production team in the chat, and we will do our best to respond right away. Drop us a note to ask for help, or if you miss any of these instructions. Thanks so much for your attention. And now, allow me to pass the mic to Alicia Lane, the facilitator for this virtual meeting. Alicia currently serves as the Community Engagement Specialist for the Housing and Planning Department. Can you change to the next slide, please? She's been with the City of Austin for 2 years, and in her role, she supports her department by designing and implementing outreach and engagement strategy. Thanks, Alicia, for facilitating today's discussion. The meeting is yours.
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Valerie. So again, my name is Alicia Lane. I am a community engagement specialist with the Housing and Planning Department for the City of Austin, and I will be facilitating today's meeting. As a reminder, I want to encourage you to submit any questions that you have in the question and answer function in Zoom, most likely at the bottom of your screen. Questions that staff does not get to during the allotted time in this meeting, or questions that staff may need to do additional research to get back to you, will be posted to the Speak Up Austin webpage in the coming weeks. So we have a few agreements on hand that I'd like to go through with you, and I encourage everyone to be mindful of them during the meeting. These agreements are for everyone, including staff. They are: have open-mindedness, listen to and respect all points of view; acceptance, suspend judgment as best you can; curiosity, seek to understand rather than persuade; discovery, discovery, question old assumptions, look for new insights; sincerity, speak for yourself about what's in your heart personally and its meaning; and brevity, go for honesty and depth, but don't go on and on and on, only because we want to make sure that we capture your input. So at this time, I want you to put in the chat if you have any other agreements that you would like to add to the list that I just read out. And again, I encourage you to use the chat if there are any other agreements that you want to add to this list for the meeting. Okay, so in the chat, I do see input about wanting to give testimonial. Thank you for that. So I really do encourage you to use the chat, and I say that because staff will be able to save it, as well as utilizing the Speak Up Austin page to give your input. So I'll wait another second if there's any other agreements, and then if not, we'll move on. Okay, so I'm going to move on, but again, I really want to encourage you all to use the chat if you have any other input. Okay, so moving on to the next slide, please, for introductions. So today we have a few speakers for today's meeting who will provide input on different parts about the project. First, we will have Jacqueline Yaft, who will provide a quick overview about the project. From there, we will hear from two airport representatives, Shane and Lynn, as well as Molly Waller from Centurion Planning and Design. Then we will start the question and answer portion of the meeting. And again, we'll encourage you to use the Q&A function to submit your question. From my production staff, do we have any other dignitaries who I should acknowledge for opening remarks?
No, Alicia, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so now I'm going to be passing the virtual mic. Please join me in welcoming our airport, Austin-Bergstrom International Airport Chief Operating Officer, long but important term, Jacqueline Yaft, for opening remarks.
Thank you, Alyssa. Can we go to the next slide, please? Okay, welcome everyone, and thank you for attending today's meeting, one of three. We had two in-person meetings this morning, and today's purpose of the meetings we're here is to talk about the fuel storage facility, to respond to the community questions that we've had throughout since October discussing the fuel project, and also to answer any questions that we have today or in the chat, or even provide any more information as a follow-up from today's meeting. Next slide, please. The other purpose we also here is the city manager has been directed with the Department of Aviation to conduct community meeting, information meetings for the residents adjacent to our fuel project as part of a resolution that Councilmember Fuentes has helped us put together through the council. The resolution specifically asks us to do the information meetings, talk about the site, talk about the process, for selecting the site, the environmental assessments, and all the information that we have in air and water quality, which we have a very robust presentation here for you to give you more of an overview of the project as a whole. Next slide, please. With that, one of the purpose we want to just give you an overview of the 2040 master plan for the airport, part of as an airport economic engine to the city of Austin and the neighboring community. We have to conduct a master plan that was for the 2040 and what it has as projects that are critical to continue supporting the airport operations and airline operations as an airport. In that master plan identified about 4 phases of 61 plus projects. The fuel project is one of them, in addition to new front terminal building, new midfield concourse for more airline gates, and also runway and airfield improvements, all to support the growth of the airport for the future in the next 30 to 50 years. Next slide, please. Part of that master plan and all the projects that are on and going through environmental assessment has been approved by the FAA and the City Council for the Master Plan 2040. And as we go with each of the project, it has its own process to get approval and permits. And as you learned through the presentation today, what are those approvals that we got for this project? And we'll be happy to answer any questions if we don't have them on the slides today. But the with the recent post-COVID recovery and how the numbers actually exceeded our expectations for recovery and the growth, and as you're hearing that we're having more flights and more passengers come through our airports, there's definitely a need for this critical facility to support our fuel storage and fuel needs to support the airline operations throughout the airport. Today, Austin has an average of 2 to 3 days worth of fuel. Industry averages about 5 to 7. But nonetheless, it's not just that, the justification, but there's also the process that we went through to get the project approved and the compliance that we have to get the permits for going through. You'll hear about that today too. We do have a quick video, next slide please, that actually give you an overview of what the fuel project is. I'm very proud of this video and how the team put it together to give you an understanding of a fuel facility at an airport.
If you've never heard of an airplane fuel facility before, you're not alone. These facilities don't often get wide attention, but they are critical for airports to operate, as they provide airplanes the fuel they need to fly. This enables planes to transport people, goods, essential and critical materials. These facilities were created to be the safest and most efficient way to store and supply aviation fuel for aircraft. They are regulated and continuously monitored and inspected while in operation. Since 1998, Austin-Bergstrom International Airport has had a main fuel facility located next to the Barbara Jordan Terminal and other fuel storage sites on the property for general aviation. But now, with an increasing demand for air travel and development at the airport must construct a second fuel facility to have sufficient fuel supply in the coming years to support a growing airport, a growing city, and a growing economy. Like we said, fuel facilities are vital for airports and are the safest way to store and supply fuel for aircraft. But let's break down how a fuel facility works. Before a fuel facility is constructed, there needs to be an environmental review to evaluate the potential environmental impact of the facility. All information from the review is presented to the Federal Aviation Administration, or FAA, This is the administration that says if it is safe or not to create a facility in the first place. If no significant impacts to air quality, socioeconomics, or environmental justice, water resources, or other surroundings are expected to occur. And after the facility has been reviewed and approved by the City of Austin and Texas Commission on Environmental Quality, the design is then approved and construction can begin. From there, plans are drawn up and the facility is constructed. The day-to-day operations of a fuel facility are fairly quiet compared to other airport noise. A fuel transport truck collects aviation fuel from a location outside of the city and takes it to the fuel facility at the airport. When it arrives at the facility, the truck parks in a designated offloading lane. Before the fuel transfer begins, the trucks are first connected to a bonding cable, which reduces the risk of generating static electricity or spark. Similar steps are taken when loading fuel onto aircraft. Hoses are then connected to the truck's rear tank, and pumping of the fuel begins into one of two fuel storage tanks located several yards away. You'll find that the fuel facility is built on concrete to protect groundwater and the earth below. The concrete is regularly monitored, and if a crack occurs, it's sealed immediately. This meets standards to create a safe operation at the airport. With the fuel now inside the tanks, let's take a look at how it's stored, protected from the elements, and contained in a safe environment. The fuel, which is known as Jet A fuel, is pumped into tanks made of steel. Generally, the tanks are never completely full, but safety procedures are in place to test the tanks at their highest capacity every now and then. This is done to ensure that the valves filling up the tanks shut off and close immediately when reaching high levels. In addition to ongoing safety tests, the tanks are monitored 24/7 and must meet all established safety requirements and pass inspections on a regular basis. These inspections are done by the City of Austin, airline partners, airport officials, and others. There are even other safety features inside the tanks that can't be seen from the outside. One of these is a fire suppression system. If a fire or flame were to occur inside the tank, the fire suppression system is immediately activated to release a foam suppressant, which extinguishes the flames. It is worth noting that Jet A fuel stored in the tanks is drastically less volatile and lets off lower emission levels than gasoline you would put in your vehicle, lawnmower, or other petroleum or diesel-powered devices. To reduce the chance of a fire occurring, the temperature of the fuel is controlled and never goes above 90 degrees, even on 100+ degree days. The tanks are built to withstand heat. Fuel is a liquid substance, so safety precautions are in place to control leaks and spills. The tanks themselves are nestled inside what is called a dike. Similar in appearance to a large swimming pool, the dike is there to contain any spills or leaks if they ever occur. It's deep enough to capture all of the fuel from two tanks at once and is lined with a material to protect the ground and soil beneath it. Austin-Bergstrom International Airport has dedicated police and firefighting units located on the airport property and are on call 24/7. At this point in our story, the fuel is stored in the tanks and waiting for pickup. So let's take a look at that process. A large truck, this one we'll call an airplane refueling truck, comes to the facility to start pumping the fuel into the rear of the truck. Once the truck is full, it heads onto the airfield and provides fuel to an airplane. This airplane refueling process only takes place at the fuel facility located near the Barbara Jordan terminal and will not take place at the new facility. The second new fuel facility will be a limited operation compared to this one. It will only exist to receive and store fuel. The fuel will be transferred directly to this existing fuel facility through an underground protected pipe. No fuel will be removed from the tanks at the new location. Airplane fuel facilities are vital to an airport's operation and critical to support our community's growth and development, and not just at the airport. As we welcome new Austinites to our city and new businesses and economic opportunity, our city's airport must be able to meet the needs of our rapidly growing Austin community and the communities throughout Central Texas.
Good afternoon.
Go ahead, Shane.
Good afternoon. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Good afternoon. I'm Shane Harbinson. I'm going to go over the new fuel facility storage. The airlines that provide air service to Austin are going to be building a fuel storage facility in 2 phases, with the first phase including 2 tanks with construction to start this spring with a 2-year construction period. The site is designed for long-term development plans with a maximum total of 4 tanks. We have yet to have a date for construction of those tanks, as those are part of the long-term plans. The site is located within airport property along 183 between McCall Lane, Montopolis Drive, and will have a new TxDOT approved design right away for an entrance and exit into the facility. A highway currently has about under 45,000 daily vehicles that drive by this section. Phase 1 will increase the daily truck volumes by approximately 60 trucks per day. Phase 2 will increase the daily truck volume by approximately 80 to 100 trucks per day, depending on the aircraft fuel demand for that given day. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Thank you. Here you can, nope, back one. Here you can see the location of the site in relationship to the rest of the airport and US 183. And later on in the presentation, you'll see additional renderings of the site in the presentation. Next slide. Now we're going to go over the new facility safety and security features. The new site will have safety and security features to prevent and respond to fires and prevent and respond to leaks. Jet A fuel is low volatile, which is a low vapor, which means it's less likely than gasoline to combust and catch fire. You can drop a lit match into a bucket of Jet A fuel and it will not catch fire. The fuel will distinguish the match. To catch fire, it has to go under the right conditions of heat and pressure. Jet A is also very low combustible, which means that fewer emissions than gasoline. And we'll have more information on that in the next few slides. Safety is on top priority of the facility operations. There's a robust fire prevention system of that suppression system. Also has controls in place to monitor any pumps that are heating or vibrating or anything that could be a hazard or risk. The facility also includes a lightning protection system that has lightning rods that would channel or collect that energy from lightning strikes and distribute it into the ground. The FAA requires airports to suspend operations, including fueling, when lightning is within 5 miles of the airport. So fueling operations would be suspended until that severe weather passes. Similar to design to prevent fire, the facility is also designed to prevent leaks with robust plans and features such as fuel level sensors, corrosion protection, auto shut-off valves, and we have our own staff that monitors the facility itself, the condition and best practice how it's operate. And the facility goes under regular safety inspections with our fire department and the operating staff, the airline staff that oversee the facility are there 24/7 since the airport and the airlines operate 24/7. Next slide, please. Going to go over the permitting inspection agencies. Making sure that the facility is safe and environmentally compliant is the responsibility of the airlines and several local, state, and federal agencies that review and approve permit plans and conducts inspections before construction and throughout the lifetime of the facilities. As you can see here, the Development Services Department oversees permits for fire suppression, drainage, electrical, mechanical, wastewater, and more. Aviation Department, again, we have professional environmental staff that conducts inspections annually and reviews. We also have a watershed department, works closely with our staff to inspect the facilities every year, looking for potential issues. Also have our response plans and review waste logs and make sure waste is disposed of properly. We also, as you've seen in the video, have a fire department that has specific equipment and have been trained on fire facilities and Jet A fuel fires and how to respond to them, and they have the proper equipment. They also oversee the hazardous materials storage permit. Also, the TCEQ, or the Texas Commission on Environmental Quality, they approve the stormwater plans for construction operation, the underground piping permits, and the air quality permit by rule. And also, as mentioned earlier, the right-of-way access to 183. Additionally, with Federal Aviation Administration, they oversee the National Environmental Protection Act, or the NEPA approval. In this case, the environmental assessment. And also they oversee making sure that the facility doesn't create any height hazards or hazards to the navigation aids that they oversee, and approve a construction and phasing plan. Next slide, please. I'm going to go over the site selection process and alternative sites for the new fuel storage facility. Next slide, please. This you can see just a general layout according to our master plan, which has identified which is the best fit on airport property for all the critical projects that will support our community in Central Texas. As the community continues to grow, so does the airport. We aim to leverage and optimize every square foot of the airport and available space to safely and efficiently deliver projects in a way that balances all the competing needs to support airport operations. These needs being the aviation envelope, or where future terminals with airline gates will be located, our cargo needs, and the support facilities such as airline maintenance and general aviation for aircraft. And then also a balancing, which would be our environmental constraints such as landfills, cemeteries, floodplains, etc. This gives an overview of our site selection. Next slide, please. Next, we're just going to go over the facility selected because the site complies with the land development code that complies or directs or guides the development of city, guides the development of developments in Austin, and also allows us to connect to the existing fuel farm. Existing fuel farm is critical. It allows us to maximize fuel capacity. This is important for us to enable to keep the refueling trucks operational at the current location while we rely on that site for the next 15 to 20 years. And having that direct access, that it doesn't go under any occupied facilities or any environmental areas, is important. We're also looking for the best design, airport design, and best things for best places to fit. So we have to make way for the midfield concourses, any improvements for future taxiway, eventually a third runway, general aviation needs, cargo needs, and military needs. Also, the site was selected. If it wasn't for that site, another larger, more disruptive operation would be slated for that location. Next slide, please. This is again just going over that we had a third-party engineering firm consider and review some of the sites, and they were looking at as well environmental sensitive areas such as floodplains, Onion Creek, also looking at the third runway, future gates, midfield concourses. Does the site meet FAA design criteria? Is it compatible with the city land development code? Can it be connected to the existing facility? And then also a future hydrant facility plans. So long-term, the fueling of the tanker trucks that go out to the aircraft, that would be placed with a hydrant fueling system. So that operation would go away. The existing site then with the third runway would go away as well, because we no longer would need the fuel tanking operations. So that fuel farm would go away to make way for a future taxiway to accommodate the future runway. Next slide, please. This goes over the same, that the long-term development is to support the future runway. The impact of Onion Creek, 100-year floodplain, et cetera. Along West Emma Browning Road. That would impact would be the purple area, which is the future terminal envelope with our future parallel concourses, which helps us develop the airport for 60 to 70 million annual passengers. It sets up the airport for the long-term development plans. Next slide, please. Over on the east side of the airport, that is slated for aircraft maintenance. That is an area where aircraft would be idling, engine run-ups, etc. So it's a dirty operation. It's keep that on the east side of the airport. Also, along west of 973 and our perimeter roads, that area is where the FAA's navigational radar is located. Also, the 100-year floodplain isn't located in that area. There's also a landfill from the Department of Defense, and the cemetery is located in that area. And having that direct connection to the existing facility is not feasible from those locations. Next slide, please. From this, I'd like to introduce Ms. Molly Waller. She's an airport planner and CEO and principal with Saterium Design Firm, which is an airport planning and environmental. She was going to go over the conducted federal required environmental assessment for this project.
Thank you, Shane. Good afternoon. Next slide, please. As Shane indicated, Centurion prepared an environmental assessment for the construction of the construction and operation of the new fuel farm. Before hopping into that, I thought I would give an explanation as far as what is an environmental assessment and what is NEPA. The National Environmental Policy Act of 1969, or NEPA, requires federal agencies to assess the environmental impact of their proposed actions before making decisions. NEPA is overseen by the President's Council of Environmental Quality, and all federal agencies are charged with the development of policies and procedures for the implementation of NEPA requirements for projects. Next slide. The Federal Aviation Administration was the lead federal agency for the NEPA document prepared for the fuel farm. They decided that an environmental assessment was suitable. The FAA requires NEPA analysis for projects that receive grant funding or require a change to the airport layout plan, which this fuel farm does. There are 3 levels of analysis: a categorical exclusion, an environmental assessment, and an environmental impact statement. Again, the preparation of an environmental assessment was determined to be most suitable for this project. As part of the NEPA process, 21 environmental impact categories require evaluation. Consultation is undertaken with state, federal, and local agencies as part of the environmental evaluation of the impact categories.
Molly?
Yes.
I'm so sorry, Molly. Do you mind slowing down a little? Only because we have Spanish interpretation on our Espanol channel.
Will do.
Thank you.
You bet. Again, 21 environmental categories are assessed through the preparation of the NEPA document. The level and types of analysis are dependent on the impact thresholds as contained within FAA Orders 5054 and FAA Order 1051. Next slide. Again, 21 resource categories were evaluated. We identified temporary construction-related impacts in noise, air quality, and water quality. These impacts will be minimized and mitigated through the implementation of construction best management practices. We identified social impacts resulting from the modification of the Highway 183 and Montopolis Drive interchange. To mitigate and minimize these impacts, the planned improvements to the interchange include the addition of a 4th signal and acceleration and deceleration lanes. We also identified solid and hazardous material impacts resulting from both the construction and the operation of the fuel farm. These impacts, again, are minimized and mitigated through the use of best management practices during construction, as well as the selection of suitable materials for the construction of the fuel farm. Resources that were identified as being present in the project area but avoided included wetlands, biological resources, and the 100-year floodplain. I believe it goes over to Sam at this point.
Hi, Molly. Thank you so much. And now I'd like to introduce Lynn Estabrook to talk through air quality and water quality considerations.
Lynn, if you are speaking, I think we cannot hear you. Lynn, make sure that you have joined via your audio to the Zoom call.
Since we're having some technical difficulties getting Lynn on the call, Jackie, would you like for me to present this piece? Great, thank you so much. Hi, everybody. This is Sam Haynes. I'm a public information officer with the Austin Airport, and I'm going to jump in for Lynn while she's working to get audio. Lynn, if at any point you're able to jump back in and have audio, then just do so, and I will happily send it back over to you all. Hi, everybody. Give me just a moment here. Okay, so what I'm going to do is talk you through the environmental studies that were conducted recently. The airport hired a third-party independent firm to conduct some modeling and some air quality studies to help us understand what the emissions will be for not only the current facility, but for the new facility. So first, I want to talk a little bit about the TCEQ. So the facility's air quality is guided by the Texas Commission on Environmental Quality. The TCEQ makes sure that the facility will not exceed 25 volatile organic compound emissions a year. And when we say volatile organic compounds, what we mean are the emissions from the jet day. So an analysis from our third-party environmental consulting firm estimated that the current facility emits approximately 4.3 tons of those emissions a year, and that does include 1.9 tons of emissions from the airplane refueling operations that you saw earlier in the video. Now, phase one of the new facility is estimated to emit approximately 3.6 tons of VOCs, and that does not include any airplane refueling operations. As you saw in the video, those operations will stay at the current facility and will not be relocated to the new facility. One reason why these tanks do have such a low emission level is because the fuel vapor levels are low because the tanks and the fuel are not hot. They've been designed to really deflect heat. And then the emissions that are emitted into the air typically dilute past about 200 feet. Next slide, please. The Environmental Protection Act requires a spill control policy and a response plan that meets federal standards. This site also has to meet state and city requirements for water quality considerations. And we as the airport conduct annual inspections for safety, security, and of course, environmental impacts. So this means that we go out and we inspect the site for any signs of leaks, rusts, or cracks in the concrete. And this really makes sure that the site maintains best practices and obligations to have a safe operation. Next slide, please. Based on input from the community, the airport has worked with the airlines to require air quality monitoring. And what we'll be doing is we'll be hiring an independent air quality expert to review and validate that air quality data. We'll also be working with the Watershed Protection Department to make sure that water quality testing is conducted. We'll once again hire an independent water quality expert just to validate that information that is collected. And we'll be continuing our annual safety, security, and environmental inspections. Next slide, please. If you're wanting to know, how can you, yes, go ahead.
You're going a little fast for our interpreters. If you could slow down just a bit.
Absolutely. Thank you for that feedback. If you're wanting to know how you can stay updated with this project and engaged with the airport on this as we move through the construction phases, you can sign up to receive facility construction updates through our monthly email newsletter. It's called Stay in Tune, and you can use the QR code to scan and sign up to receive monthly email updates delivered to your inbox. We'll also be posting project updates and construction updates to the project website at speakupaustin.org/AUS fuel. Next slide, please. And we're also working with the airlines to redesign the US 183 facing portion of the fuel storage facility. We presented an alternative design to the community back this fall and received some feedback. And we've worked with the airlines to improve that design to include a new decorative security fence and enhanced landscaping and hardscaping. And we have just a quick video to show you what that will look like. You can see here on the design that this new design features more trees, more landscaping, more hardscaping, and an improved perimeter fence. Next slide, please. And here are some resources to stay up to date with this project and stay up to date and engaged with the airport. And now I'd like to bring back our facilitator, Alicia, to guide us through our question and answer period.
Hi, thank you. So we're now going to start our question and answer section. As a reminder, please use the question and answer or the Q&A widget, most likely at the bottom of your screen. And that is how you can send us questions. So if you're utilizing the chat for questions that you would like staff to view, please again, put them in the Q&A. So we do have questions coming in, so please just grant me some grace while I go through them. So for staff, our first question. So the author of this question said that they are opposed to the location and they want to know, why can't this project be located to the east side of the runways?
Hey, Alicia, this is Shane. I can answer that question. So there's a couple on the east side of the airport. There's a lot of constraints for, there's the landfills, there's the 100-year floodplain, there's cemeteries, there's other land designated for Austin Energy's new substation. There's also the FAA's radar. That's a critical area that surrounds that radar where you can't have infrastructure there. And then there's areas slated for what should be a future airline maintenance facility and general aviation. And then the long 180 in the interior of the airport is slated for continuing with airline gates. So the best fit location was the location here on long 183. It provides that direct connection to the existing facility where the transfer line does not go under any existing or future occupied buildings and allows the use of the existing facility, and then have long-term plans for the expansion of beyond 30 million annual passengers, with having the long-term plans to put in 2 additional tanks for a total of 4 tanks.
Okay, thank you. So moving on to our next question. What route will fuel transport trucks take to supply the existing facility? And what route would trucks take if this project moves forward? How many more trucks per day would be needed to supply the larger facility? So that was a 3-part, so I'll go over it again, and please let me know, panelists, if you need me to repeat. What route will the fuel transport trucks take to supply the existing facility? What route would trucks take if this project moves forward? How many more trucks per day would be needed to supply the larger facility?
Alicia, this is Shane again. I can answer that question. The fuel tanks, when the tanks get built, the loading of those tanks will occur at the new facility along 183. That will not be taking place at the existing facility. What will be occurring at the new facility is where they offload the fuel into the bulk storage tanks. And from there, those bulk storage tanks, the fuel could be used a transfer line to the existing facility. And then that facility then would upload the airline fueling trucks, the trucks that actually take the fuel to the aircraft that are out on the apron. That operation would not occur at the new facility. That will stay at the existing facility. The truck route would come along 71 and 183. and use the new entrance at TxDOT at that intersection. That section currently today on 183 has a little under 50,000 vehicles a day. And phase one, the approximate increase for that site would be about 60 fuel trucks a day. And the long term, when there's 4 tanks, would range approximately between 80 to 100 trucks per day to fuel that site.
Thank you. So for our next question, does aviation gasoline contain lead?
No, not the Jet A fuel. There is some general aviation fuel that has some lead into it, but that is not on this facility. That is at the fixed base operator. So there's general aviation facilities. That is a separate tank system, separate operation, but Jet A fuel, no.
Great, thank you. For our next question, the author says there are numerous critical environmental features and wetlands in the area where these tanks were proposed. And so it looks like they're asking if this is true or is this not true? And then has the city's watershed protection department granted buffer variances?
Does Molly want to answer the first part of the question on the wetlands and the environmental assessment?
Yes. There was a wetland delineation that had been done previously for the site that we utilized for the preparation of this EA. And the design of the fuel farm and associated features were all proposed outside of these wetland areas. So no wetlands are impacted.
And then the second part of that same question was, has the city's watershed protection department granted buffer variances? And then perhaps in answering this question, if you can define buffer variances, if we have any community members who aren't sure what that term means.
I will say on the end of the environmental assessment, no buffer variances were obtained. I do believe that the facility is sited outside of the wetland buffer. If anyone else from the city has more information.
No, Molly, you're correct. And we've received the permit following the land development code, which watershed's the reviewer.
Great, thank you for that follow-up, Molly and Shane. For our next question, what consideration was given to an alternate location for the construction and future operation of this facility on the eastern side of the airport property?
Alicia, it's similar to the previous question where on the east side of the property, doesn't give a direct access to the existing facility. And the east side of the airport is where our Department of Defense landfills, cemetery, the FAA's radar and navigational aids and future airline maintenance facilities are slated for. It doesn't give that direct access to the existing facility. So all those constraints on the east side eliminated as the best fit for this field facility.
Great, thank you. So we have some additional questions. This question is asking for further elaboration on site selection considerations. So this sounds very perhaps similar to the previous question, just if there were other considerations.
Yeah, during the master plan process, you're looking at all the competing needs of the airport to accommodate the growth. Again, that's your airline needs, your cargo needs, your general aviation needs, military needs, and balancing those needs within the constraints of the airport itself, which is your 100-year floodplain, the orientation of the runways, and then your navigational facilities or aids that are controlled by the FAA. And then you're trying to find the best fit of those uses that are on the airport campus or airport property. And again, we're trying to maximize the ultimate development of the airport and identifying some of those constraints and knowing the need for having the connection to the existing facility really came to the western edge of the airport and identifying where's the best location of that. And then is what you heard from Molly, et cetera, trying to avoid any type of wetlands or floodplains. And then looking at the delivery of that fuel safely, utilizing your highways, such as Highway 71, 183, as the best fit for this facility. And knowing that it's a storage facility that is designed to store Jet A fuel, and Jet A fuel is a low volatile, low combustible fuel, and that it doesn't create those vapors and emissions. We can control that, monitor that, and then also have the proper controls for safety for any type of spills, et cetera. It was the best fit for that location to have the fuel storage facility.
And Shane, this is Jacqueline. Also, I will add to that is that site is identified for a part of the critical asset that we support the airport operations. So the site has been identified to develop a project on there, in which project would have a lesser impact for the neighboring communities versus a general aviation or a cargo facility that would have aircraft actually run up areas or engine run ups or fuel burning or noise. So every site on the airport has been identified for a project to support the airport operation and the airline operations, identifying how we use those sites and when to implement what has been identified, goes through the environmental process to tell us that that's the best site for this.
Thank you. You just spoke to this. There was a follow-up question asking about if the impact on neighborhoods in close proximity, meaning 500 feet or less, if that was a consideration when looking at the alternate sites. Would anyone like to speak to this one a little bit more about, again, kind of if the proximity of neighborhoods was a consideration, and again, what does that mean?
Of course, it is a consideration as part of the assessment and the environmental impacts. We are as an airport and part of a city department, we are conscientious to the community around us and making sure that we comply with the regulatory for environmental standards, but also our environmental sustainability commitment to the city as a whole. And as an airport, we won awards for how we are minimizing the impact of the airport on the communities around us. So part of the study looks at the environmental impacts to the neighboring
Response plans for fire and for stormwater. The facility is designed to prevent and deal with fire, and then they also recommend this specific vehicles designed about fuel fires, such as jet fuel. The site is made on site, so we know no mission against.
Okay, this person is asking, is there a growth plan for the airport moving forward? Or the growth cap for development of the airport moving forward? Can you hear me now? Yes. Okay. Are there any parts of this project not going to pay? Is there any result of this not going to pay?
Joining us today and look forward to answering your questions that will be posted. Have a good day. Thank you.